Coming up on the show, myself, Barry and Tony go on a deep dive into the Grand National. We tip up the horses we think is most likely to win the race, but also some each-way fancies too. And we also go through all the Grade 1s over the 3-day Aintree Festival. There is loads coming up on this jam-packed episode of Off the Fence. Hello and welcome back to Off the Fence. This is your rundown of all things jump racing, and of course we were with you all season. We built up to the Cheltenham Festival. We've had a couple of weeks off, but now we are back with a bang for our Aintree preview. We're going to get stuck into the National, all the good Grade 1s, and a couple of handicaps too throughout this show. And as always, I am joined by Tony Keenan and Barry Geraghty. Barry, how are you? How have you got on since Cheltenham?
Oh, good, Vanessa. Yep, had a couple of easy weeks and looking forward to Aintree now. Sure, some brilliant racing again.
Nice. Been out on the tractor in the spring weather?
No. Taking it easy.
Nice. I like it. Tony, how have you been?
I've been pretty good. I think I've probably switched a bit to flat mode at this stage. Bar Aintree, Fairyhouse and Punchestown dip into the jumps big time for those three festivals, but it's flat for me at this stage of the year. Really looking forward to the weekend. I'm actually going over Saturday. I've never been to Aintree before, so I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be an interesting week. I think Willie Mullins perhaps opting not to take the British Trainers Championship seriously. He is going to have runners this week, but not the masses maybe that we anticipated. It's going to open things up a little bit. I know from my own punting that if his short price horses are going to pitch up at Cheltenham and just win, I'm probably not going to, unless I'm on them from a couple of weeks and months in advance. But this 3 days looks really competitive. Last year the Irish B team of horses I think were able to go over and win with Abacadabras and Facardouderies. Be interesting to do so this year, but I think the English resistance is going to be pretty strong.
Good, plenty to get stuck into, and I like that you're coming over on Saturday. You'll love it. Great day out. Well, I hope you will anyway. I'll be there all week as well. I cannot wait. Let's get stuck straight into the Grand National itself. We are going to go back over Thursday and Friday's racing in due course, but we thought we'd start with the bang, start with the big one. Any second now, Snow Leopardess, Delta Work, Ascaria 10, loads of them at the top of the market. Obviously, we haven't got the final field yet, Tony, but when you look at it now, as who do you think is representing a little bit of value, and who do you think is a terrible price at the moment?
Yeah, I think the field is probably pretty set. I think what's there at the 5 days, you're looking at the top 40 horses, maybe number 41, 42, 43 would have chance of getting in, but I think people who've made it to the 5 days are pretty intent in running, such as the stature of the race. I suppose the race's makeup has changed a little bit in recent years with the modifications. It has become more of a race for younger horses, the 8, 9, 10-year-olds. It used to be the very experienced horses could win, maybe horses with a little bit of back class, but I think looking at it as a more traditional handicap chase now, trying to get on something that is more up and coming might be the route to go. Of the front ones of the market, I think any second now would definitely be my preference of those. He's obviously been around the circuit, very unlucky in the race last year with the significant bit of hampering that he got. Excellent prep in the Bobby Joe where he beat Ascaria 10. I'm a big fan of Ascaria 10. I just do wonder about him at the trip. He breezed through the race in Fairyhouse, kind of from the turn in, and just got to the last and then just faded a little bit. Now if they can ride him with a little bit more restraint and hold on to him, although that is quite difficult at the entry with the long run in and the atmosphere, and it is tempting for jockeys to go early, so I just do worry about him. So any second now of the front ones, but my main fancy of the race from a few months out has been Longhouse Port, and I'm quite happy to stick with him. He was really good in the Thyestes, jumped brilliantly. He was up at the pace in a strongly run race, coped very well with that. The ground there wasn't traditional Gorn in January ground. It was actually relatively good by their standards, so that would give hope that he'd be okay on this surface on Saturday, which will be well watered in any case, and the farmers worked out really well with the likes of Deal Care, Ascaria 10, Death Duty all coming out and boosting it. Look, his nav and run over hurdles was disappointing, But while it was heavy ground that day, it was a little bit of a speed test. They dawdled a bit and then sprinted. I'm not sure that suits him over 2.5 miles over hurdles. And I'm just hoping come back over the bigger obstacles will suit him. So he'd be my main pick. I've one or two others there at bigger prices, but I'm quite happy with him at whatever he is, 16 or 20 to 1. I think he has a life, definitely. Great.
Longhouse Burt for Tony, and a positive nod to Any Second Now as well. Barry, where are you looking at the race?
Yeah, so a lot of what Tony says as regards, young horses coming into it. But for me, the big thing is the weight, and with the COVID restrictions and the saunas being taken out of the racecourses or not being used, they've added 3 pounds to the weights. So normally you carry 3 pound more than the weight officially. So 11 stone, you actually carry 11.3 to allow for your back protector. That's gone to 11.6 now. So you have an extra 6 pound. So of the 15 finishers last year, not one of those carried more than 11 stone. So I think this is a big negative. Now there is more horses above 11 stone this year, but I'm just very worried for the ones at the top, up at Manila Indo, I'm in a time should I say at the top, Delta Work and Any Second Now. So Any Second Now will actually carry 12 stone, and that's tough work around Aintree. With all the jump and the ground's going to be watered, it'll be on the slow side, it's going to be hard work. So for me, I just have a big question mark over those real heavyweights at the top. I just worry about those. Bristol de May, he struggled last year. So I think it's going to be tougher for them. I'd like the horses down towards further down the weights. Longhouse Poet I would have an interest in. Ascari at 10 likewise. Enjoy Dallin is probably the horse I do like. Third in Randox Grand National behind Freewheel and Dillon. And Run Well Fred as a 7-year-old, that was a good run. He was third behind Schoolboy Hours at Christmas in Leopardstown, and he ran behind Good Time Johnny in a hurdle race at the Dublin Racing Festival. So he's been trained for the day. He does jump well. He seems to stay well. So he would be one for me. Tony was mentioned 42, 43 as the cut-off, and I'd say he's about right. There is a horse who I've been very sweet on for the last couple of weeks, is Commodore of Venetia Williams. For me, he ran a career best when beating Mr. Frog Patches in Cheltenham back in December. But he's number 45 at the minute. I think he's going to struggle to get in. He jumps brilliantly. He's had a wind up and was a career best, as I said last time. So for me, if he did sneak in, he would be one for massive value. I think he's a great shout, but I think he's going to struggle. But I'd be happy with Enjoy Dallin. I think he's the right kind of weight. And as I say, I'd be very just concerned about the horses towards the top.
I always feel sorry for the connections of those horses waiting to see if they're going to get a run. I mean, imagine the sleepless nights you're going to have just praying that a couple of horses come out. But let's move on. That's the Grand National covered. A few stronger fancies and some each way pokes in there as well. Let's move on to the Grade 1s, on to Thursday. The Manifesto Novices Chase looks a really weak addition, Barry, in comparison to what we saw over the same trip at Cheltenham. I know that's the sort of theme of Aintree, but I do feel a bit sorry for them. It's still a Grade 1. It's still over that middle distance trip, and yet it gets sort of, in terms of calibre of entries, it's pretty weak, I think. At the moment, Pictory and Warlord are up at the top of the betting. What do you think of the race as a whole?
No, it's not a vintage race, there's no doubt, but there's there to be one all the same. For me, Warlord, who split Blue Lord and Riviere de Tel in the Arkle, I think if either of those horses were to line up here, they'd be a warm order favourite. He was a winner in Linkfield previous to that. Pictory won in Kemp the last time. I think he needs to be better than that. So for me, I'd be with Warlord against Pictory.
Okay, and let's stick with you, Barry, and go on to the juvenile hurdle where we've got Brazil and Pied Piper potentially clashing again in that, sort of bringing the form through from Cheltenham. Do you think anything in that will be able to reverse the form with Brazil, or would you still be very keen on him if he was to tip up here?
No, I like Brazil. He was good at Cheltenham. Obviously Gaelic Warrior was put up a big show and was a tough nut to crack, but he battled well Brazil. He showed his experience. Pied Piper, I was a little bit underwhelmed with him in the Triumph. Considering the lack of pace, I thought he would show more pace than he did. He had Carrie Allen only a few lengths behind him. I don't think that form is strong enough. Vabone had the luxury of show jumping the last and quickening it again to win. So I don't think Pied Piper, I was just a little bit disappointed with him. It'll be his third trip to England as well, which isn't easy for a juvenile. So I'd be with Brazil here. I think he could be just worth opposing the favourite. Okay,
Brazil, the second best at the moment at 5-2, I think, something around that price, taking on Pied Piper in that. Tony, what about the Betfair Bowl? Looking at this could be quite a decent race. You've got Eldorado Allen in there, Protectorat potentially after his brilliant run in the Gold Cup. He's got an entry here, and Clan de Zobo as well, Conflated. This looks like one of the stronger Grade 1s on the first day, I thought.
Yeah, really good Grade 1 this. Very competitive, open looking race there. You have 6 or 7 of them quite close in the betting between kind of 3 and 8 or 9 to 1. So it is going to be quite a closely matched field. It would be a race that horses coming from the Gold Cup, although not necessarily running well in the Gold Cup, do well in. So you've got Protectorat and you've got Royal Piguet. I don't think there was much between them at Cheltenham. Literally at the line there wasn't an awful lot between them. Protectorate made this mistake at the last, which is maybe more obvious to people. You know, it says, okay, well, dramatic mistake at the last stands out, but Royal Piguet had to work quite hard. He was out wide, made a mid-race move into it to get to near the lead. He made quite a bad mistake 4 out, which cost him kind of position at the time, and he rallied quite well. He'd probably want a little bit more rain. There has been some rain around, but I think kind of forecasts were overdone a bit. I think they should be a little bit closer together in the betting. Not really a conflated fan. Leopardstown race, a little bit false perhaps. I don't know. I think he wasn't able to go to gallop in the Ryanair more so than anything else. You're telling me that Clandazobo is going to get the blinkers first time. I think that's really interesting. The cheek pieces worked well on him when using this race last year. Put up a brilliant performance and backed up a Punchestown. I'd still wonder, did the hard race in the King George first him out? Is he still feeling the effects of that? He seemed to be at Newbury. He's had time to get over that. He would obviously have a chance. But the one I came down on was the horse that won at Newbury, Eldorado Allen. I think he's put in a really good season this term. I thought his run in the Ryanair was excellent. Look, all the Irish jockeys, smart fellas, decided they were going to ride for second Allaho rather than try to beat him. Brendan Powell decided he was going to try and win the race, and you have to admire that. And I thought he hung in with Allaho for a long time. His jumping was excellent. He's a notably good jumping performances the last twice. The trip, I suppose, if it turned into a slog, would be a potential worry, but he stayed fine at Newbury, admittedly, in quite a steadily run race. But I kind of like his upside going back over this trip. I thought his Ryanair run was excellent. Well, he finished third. I thought he was clearly the second best horse in the race. And, you know, finishing that kind of close to Allaho, having mixed it with him, I'd say it's not all that far behind getting run over by a Plutard in the Gold Cup, you know, which effectively those horses, they were well beaten by a Plutard, and Minel Indo, you know, looked like a horse with a physical issue up the straight. So I just don't want to get too carried away with the Gold Cup form. The winner was brilliant, but a lot of them were in a line in behind. So I'm quite happy with Eldorado Allen there at 5 or 6 to 1 or whatever he is at the moment.
And like you say, what is a wide open but very decent looking race, so a bit of value there with Eldorado Allen. Barry, would you concur with a lot of what Tony said, or would you like to argue against some of that?
No, well, you'd have to respect Eldorado Allen, but Clandazobo really booked his form last year when he went here and went on to Punchestown, where he beat Albon Photo and Facado de Rees. So I think Paul Nicholls has targeted the same route as he went last season, and it worked well. He obviously goes in here fresh, having not been to Cheltenham. So no, I think, and as you mentioned earlier, the blinkers are going to be of interest too. So a lot of positive from me with Clandazobo.
Yeah, I was down at Paul's this morning. He confirmed the blinkers are going on instead of the cheek pieces. He'd worked very well in them, and when I asked him in what sort of form was he in comparison to 12 months ago, he said very, very similar. He's very pleased with him, and he just comes alive at this time of year, and he has the form in the book to back that up. So who are we to argue? Tony, let's stick with you for the Aintree Hurdle. Epatante obviously stepping up in trip. Zanahir in there brewing up a storm as well. Not entirely sure who's actually going to line up in this, but I suppose the interesting angle here is Epatante going over the 2.5 miles.
Yeah, you have the second and third from the Champion Hurdle coming on to this. Been thinking all season that Zanahir would be suited to step up to 2.5. He certainly looks that way. Oftentimes ex-juvenile hurdler would be that way. He ran well in Cheltenham, looked like the step up and trip would suit. A couple of small concerns with him. He has had quite a busy season, 5 runs, this will be coming on for a 6th run, and the stable form is definitely an issue. Like they have been struggling from March into April. He does have a relatively good run to his new career best actually last time, so that's a positive in his favour, but it is a concern. I suppose I was interested in Barry's thoughts on Epatante. Like Zanahir has all along has looked like he would want this trip in time, but Epatante you know, would have looked a speed 2 miler to my eye a lot of the time, but was probably better than the form in the Champion Hurdle in that she kind of made an awkward landing at the last and probably was good for a length or two further clear of Zanahir. It's not a race with a strong betting opinion. I think the market is pretty right, but I would be interested in Barry's take on what Epatante will do over this trip.
Wouldn't have any major concern. You know, won the Champion Hurdler 2 years ago. At that stage, you'd have a question mark about her getting a trip as a 6-year-old, but not at this stage. I would say stays well and would enjoy it. The better the ground, the better for her, but it's forecast to be about good to soft or thereabouts. If it got very soft for some reason, that would be in Zanahir's favour and against Epitant. But if we're presuming that the ground is going to be good to soft, I think she'll be hard to beat. She can stalk him, arrive with one run after the last and do him for pace, because she would have beaten him, I won't say comfortably, but she would have beaten him better had she not been so untidy at the last in the champion hurdle. So no, I'd be sweet and Epitant here. And one for value maybe, Glory and Fortune. I thought he came from a long way back in the champion hurdle. It wasn't run at an overly fast pace as we saw, but he only had one horse behind him, top of the hill, had a bit of ground, made a bit of ground into the straight. I thought he finished well, and I thought with a better run race over this trip, ridden a little bit closer, he could run a little bit better, maybe run into a place.
Okay, bit of each way value with Glory and Fortune, and a sweet enough shout on Epitant stepping up in trip for the first time. Tony, before we wrap up Thursday, just a bit of a recap of the mare's bumper, some nice types in that, and I think you have one for us in there, or one you're relatively keen on anyway.
Yeah, a couple of Irish mares quite prominent in the betting for this naughtiness. I would have a little bit of time for her. Lorna Fowler's mare probably should have won first time out of Punchestown last May. They did win at Fairyhouse on New Year's Day. A couple of okay types in behind. Wouldn't be an absolute standout, but there's a reasonable level of form. Thought she was only a fair price. I'd definitely be against Astro Diamond. She was fourth in the graded race at the Dublin Racing Festival. I thought she looked very temperamental there. She didn't want to go by at all. And the form would have got a couple of knocks yesterday at Fairyhouse when Doran's Weir was able to get the better of that Dublin Racing Festival form. I think that's a little bit of a weird race. They went a really strong gallop. Jamie Codd pushed the pace around halfway and a bit of a pace collapse. It would be hard to know exactly what was the best mare in that, and Astro Diamond I'd say possibly wasn't, just with the way she finished out the race. The one I was coming down on here, and unfortunately the price of this is shortened a little bit in the last couple of days, but I would have her near favoured, is Rosie Redrum. She was second in the Newbury bumper on Betfair Hurdle Day. I was a little bit sceptical what that form amounted to. They finished in a little bit of a heap. Now on the day I would say she was the best horse because she came from off the pace and it was quite steadily run, did well to finish as close as she did. But the fourth out of that race, Authorised Speed, was fifth in the champion bumper, beating 11 lengths by Facile Vega. The champion bumper is just an absolute world away from this race. And Rosie Redrum was declared for the champion bumper, and was taken out on account of the ground. Obviously turned really heavy that they were talking about putting it off the Wednesday at Cheltenham. So the ground, no matter nearly what rain they're going to get at Aintree, it's not going to be anywhere near as bad. And I definitely think she's got a chance in what is obviously competitive and open race with lots of unexposed ones. But yeah, the Newbury form getting the lift in the champion bumper and how she's shaped there would make her a bit of interest.
Okay, positive shout for Rosie Redrum. Let's move on to Friday, Tony, and kick off with the top Novices Hurdle at the 2 miler. John Bonnet in there at the moment at the top of the betting, and then bigger prices really behind him. So really this race is all about whether John Bonnet actually tips up here, which I don't think any of us have the answer to at this stage.
Yeah, look, it would have looked the obvious race for him straight after the Supreme, with the likelihood of Constitution Hill going to Punchestown. Kind of market moves today would suggest maybe he's not running. Everything else seems to be shortening up. He has the option of running the 2.5 mile race on the Saturday. I suppose he also has the option of Punchestown going maybe for the novice race there if Constitution Hill were to go the champion hurdle route. But in any case, I think if he were to pitch up here, I might like to take him on. He was used as a spoiler in Cheltenham to Maye, which probably isn't the greatest sign of him, or at least the Constitution Hill is vastly superior on him. He looked vastly superior on the day, but I think using him to kind of rough Dysart Dino up a bit, possibly not the greatest sign. The one that I think is a little bit overpriced, and again the stable form is a worry, but again he has a good recent run, is Vina Ardenza. Gordon Elliott's horse. It ran won a maiden hurdle in Torless back in the late autumn on decent ground. I presume it was left off because of the ground in the midwinter, but came back in a race at Naas Grade 2 just before Cheltenham. I thought shaped really well on ground that it wouldn't have really liked. Moved up very threateningly into the race again. A steadily run race, wasn't easy to come from off the pace. Come there at the last looking to be travelling best. I think hit 1 to 5 and running or something like that, and just was outstayed. And again in a race where kind of they were there was a lot of trouble sort of from the last to the lane, and maybe might have got in the steward room on another day. So yeah, I thought that was a really promising run back. I was kind of wondering why it wasn't in at Fairy House in the Grade 2 at the weekend, but I hope they're aiming at this. Would look kind of a speed test on decent ground would suit this horse very well.
Okay, like it. Barry, let's move on to the Mildmay Novices Chase. Now this could be a potential smash up, well, the one that we were really hyping ahead of Cheltenham that never materialised, between Brave Man's Game, Ahoy Senor and Lahon Press. I know it's sort of ground dependent. We're pretty confident Brave Man's Game is going to line up here, but as for the other two, touch unsure and a bit weather dependent. But I suppose, do you think that Brave Man's Game can overturn Ahoy Senor and Lahon Press, or would you be siding with Venetia Williams' horse, or would you be looking elsewhere?
No, I think as you say, the ground is going to play a big role here. The forecast was worse, but it seems to have improved a little bit. They had some rain last night, or should I say on Sunday night. But the forecast isn't given as bad during the week as was expected, so that's very much in Brave Man's Game favour, I believe. Lahon Press, Venetia has said that ideally she wants it on the soft side, and I saw a video that Venetia tweeted of Lahon Press in the paddock this week, and he was bucking and squealing, so he couldn't be any better. He's a horse who's improved at every run. If he lined up and it's on the soft side, I'd be with Lahon Press, but if it's going to be on the better side, I think I'll be happy with Brave Man's Game. Ahoy Senor, I don't think Aintree is going to be his track at this level. I think we'd better suited by a stiffer track. I don't think the fences coming at him as quick as they will down the back in Aintree especially, and the cross fence, I don't think he'll be able to organise himself in time, so I'd be slightly against him, but Brave Man's Game on better ground, but I'd be Lahon Press and softer.
Okay, weather dependent, weather caution going with that race, and the rest of them really. Tony, the Marsh Chase, Fakir Dudaris has obviously been aimed at this, having since swerved Cheltenham for the Joseph O'Brien, JP McManus team, and a lot of people are latching onto him. He's a 6-4 shot currently, and then next best is Funambule Savola at 5-1. Is this just for the taking?
He's another now that would want possibly a little bit of rain at this trip at this stage of his career. I think there's a possibility of a result here. I think at Ascot he looked and he'd all of the trip there over the kind of extended 2-5 on good and testing ground. I know he didn't get 3 miles a couple of times he tried it last season, but that was when he's a younger horse, French bred type. I think he might get 3 miles now when he tries it. Look, he's entered in both races. It would make sense to go for this race because it is by far the weaker of the two relative to the Bowl race, but I would have a little bit of worry about him getting done for toe by something around the 2.5 around here. That said, the horses that are chasing them up in the market are all kind of suspect stayers. Funambule Savola has a really good record at 2 miles, excellent record, ran well behind Shishkin at this meeting last year, but trip would have to be a worry. Captain Guinness is a very, very free going horse, hard to see him lasting home, and so Ryle again, another strong travelling type. There's a little bit of a worry. You're getting into horses there that maybe aren't the most likeable after that, Hitman and Mr. Fisher and St Calvados and that, but I do think there's a little bit of a chance of an upset. I'd like to see what the final field shapes up as and what way the ground is, but as it stands, I think I'd take on Fakir Dudaris.
Okay, taking on Fakir in the Marsh. Barry, Sefton Novices Hurdle. Manella Croon obviously missed Cheltenham and redirected here, and then you've got Banbridge stepping up in class from his Cheltenham victory. I think he might tip up, and Good Risk at All, another one who would be upped in class, but also missed Cheltenham. Where are we looking? This is another very open looking race really. Manella Croon is at the top of the market currently at 5-2, but it's kind of wide open. I feel anyway. I thought this was a very tricky one.
Yeah, it is, but also then you have Walking on Air is there as well as a chance, but Banbridge and No Risk at All are Good Risk at All are all both entered in the 2.5 as well, and Good Risk at All has handicap entries. But if I was with Banbridge, I'd be happier to take on Manella Crooner than maybe 3 Stripe Life over 2.5. So I'd be inclined to go here with Banbridge. Manella Crooner stayed on really well behind Manella Crooner in Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival. Proved that day how well he stays, but Aintree's a sharper track. It's slightly up on trip, but I think it balances out. I wouldn't mind taking on Manella Crooner with Banbridge. To me, he looks really progressive. It was a solid performance in the Martin Pipe, and that race has worked out well over the years of a good progressive sort. So I think he's the right type. He's going to make a smashing chaser. But I think I'd just take on Manella Crooner with him.
Okay, Banbridge currently 4-1 for Joseph O'Brien's team. Tony, just a question for you, just in terms of obviously Cheltenham to Aintree this time around. It's a 3-week gap. We've seen it be a touch closer before and a touch further away before. How often do we see the Cheltenham form backed up at Aintree? And would you expect to see it again this year, just across the board, not necessarily with this race specifically, just in general? Do you think the Cheltenham form is going to back up at Aintree this time?
I don't have the stats to hand, and it is very individual to different horses. Some of the Cheltenham races are strong, some of them maybe are a little bit weak. I think you see the knock-on effects you were saying about that 2.5 mile race that opens the meeting here. Like, there were only 4 runners in the equivalent race at Cheltenham, so it kind of has to be weak. I suppose Gordon Elliott seems to be taking the meeting quite seriously, running maybe a few more of his, the Pied Pipers, the Zanahirs that kind of ran okay in defeat, and this Manila Crooner, sorry, and his form has been well boosted. Like the Nathaniel Lacey form has worked out well, but no, I wouldn't have a sweeping generalisation. I think you have to look at each horse individually and like, did they have hard races in Cheltenham, how many runs they've had before that, and so on.
Take each race as they come. Just before we leave Friday, sorry Tony, mention for the Topham, do you fancy anything in that?
Yeah, well Barry's horse could, outsider for the Grand National, could possibly pitch up here, I think, couldn't he, Commodore? And you know, horses do the odd time kind of get out and make things very difficult for those in behind. But the horse I like in this, I have mentioned him before on the show, is Bazio. If he gets in, he's down toward the bottom of the weights. Ted Walsh mentioned this race for him after he won in Killarney. I think it was last August, a flat left-handed track over 2.5 miles, where he was successful on that occasion, and similar kind of setup this week. It looks like it. I think he's been running well in races over shorter all winter. Some of those good races like the Dan Moores race at the Dublin Racing Festival. I think he's ripe for a step up and trip now at this point. He ran well over 2.5 at Leopardstown the last time. And I think his jumping style is very safe. He tends to bank the fences a bit. I think he might suit Aintree very well. And he's a big old price. You definitely see when the extended places come into play. He's definitely one to be interested. I just think the race will suit him quite well. Another one there that ran well in the race last year, Snugsborough Hall. He was fourth in it last year, an older horse for the Cusicks there. He was fourth off 143 last year. Like, rare Irish horse, he's down to 136 now. Hasn't been running that bad. And has had kind of a hurdles preparation for this, I presume, with a view to going back for the race. So get a couple of their prices that I think have a bit of a chance.
Okay, and those extended places, we love those sort of markets. Barry, let's move on to the Mersey Novices Hurdle, the 2.5 mile that we've been talking about. And again, obviously it's just very hard at this stage because the horse isn't going to reel off. We've already mentioned in other races. Stage Star probably is one of the horses that we absolutely know is going to go for the 2.5 mile race. But you've got 3 Stripe Life in there as well, and obviously no Sir Gerhard to contend with this time around. Who do you fancy in this?
Yeah, well, Stage Star pulling up with Cheltenham, he's going to have to bounce back a good bit from that. He ran a bit keen on that occasion behind Sir Gerhard, but still to pull up was a big disappointment. Sir Gerhard's been rock solid. Second to 3 Stripe Life's been rock solid. Second to Sir Gerhard's last 2 runs, placed in the bumper last year in Cheltenham. You know, I think he's, of the novice hurdlers, I think he's fairly solid and he's the one you'd want to be on. Okay,
and Tony, for you, the 2 mile novices chase, Edwardstone in there looks likely to tip up, and the only other horse taking him on, that he's met before anyway, is Third Time Lucky, but he smashed him already. You've got Gentleman to Me in there, which might be the bit of the one horse he is yet to meet, but he'd have to step up on what he'd done so far to beat a horse like Edwardstone at the moment, wouldn't he?
Yeah, Edwardstone's another now that's had a busy season, but it's going to be very hard to turn down whatever the £120,000 total prize money for this race. It's just, you've got most of the horse from the Arkle are missing, and as you say, you've only got the JP McManus horse there. Willie Munns has done a good job with that horse. He was an absolute tearaway at times over hurdles. He pulled his chance to win the Martin Pipe last year, and then he went to Punchestown and was doing all sorts of stupid antics before the race and took off mid-race and just making life very difficult. So he's done well to get him settled. He's won a couple of races, probably aren't the greatest races, but he's won them very easily. But Edwardstone just sets a very high standard, very professional horse, did everything right in the Arkle, and the odds on there, wherever he's 4 to 6, I think that's perfectly good if odds on is your thing. Arkle winners are a very good record of backing up in this, the horses do try.
Okay, Edwardstone, strong favourite in the 2 mile novices chase. And then finally, to wrap up proceedings on the Saturday, the Liverpool Hurdle over 3 miles. It looks like 3 of the top 4 from the Stayers Hurdle are going to tip up again here. Flooring Porter, Time Hill and Champ. Are we taking Flooring Porter on around Aintree, or do we just accept now that he's the best in the staying division at this stage?
I think he is. If Classical Dream was to line up, maybe he might give him a run on a track like this. But no, I think Flooring Porter's going to be hard to beat. Time Hill, who won this race last year, he beat Roxana. I think this is a stronger race this year. Champ ran better in the Stayers Hurdle that he had in his previous start in Cheltenham with the Cleeve. He won the Sefton 3 years ago, but I'm just not fully convinced maybe at this stage that Aintree is his track. He might just prefer a stiffer track. So for me, Flooring Porter, I think, is going to be very hard to beat. But preliminaries will be a little bit of a question mark for him, because Aintree, underneath that bridge, under the stands, all those things could affect him. So you'll need to see him at post and see him some bit relaxed before you'd have be fully confident in him. But he is the best horse in the race and he'll be hard to beat.
Yeah, that's a good point. Read the prelims. Saturday, Grand National Day. Tony Keenan's going to be there, roaring him out onto the track. Tony, will you be cheering him on from the stands, or are you looking elsewhere?
I wouldn't do that to the horse going around trying to clap and frighten him or anything like that. That's complete dark arts altogether. I like to try and back winners, but I'm not going to go down that route. No, I am going to take a chance on a little bit of a price here in this race. Kashari, I'm not actually sure where he exactly finished in the Stayers Hurdle. He was 5th or 6th. I thought he shipped really well. I thought coming to the last, this lad has a chance of just about making 3rd, and he just flattened out a little bit. It wasn't a massive surprise because he hadn't run until Aintree, since Aintree the previous November, so entitled to need it a little bit. And I found some interesting trainer comments after that. He said that he'd got a very nasty cut at Aintree. And had to actually walk him in the sea for about 8 weeks afterwards. It was a very rushed preparation for Cheltenham, so I'm expecting him to improve quite a bit for that run. And he's already a course winner at Aintree. Like, he's ex-Willie Mullins, joined David Christie. His 2 runs joining David Christie have been excellent. And yeah, look, Flooring Porter, if he reproduces the last couple of runs he's had at the Cheltenham Festival, would be the one to beat. But I'd definitely be interested in this horse, a big price, back in place only, and stuff like that. I think there's a bigger performance in him than he showed the last day.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I feel like we've rattled through all the good racing there, and we've given you some favourites to take on and some favourites we're very strong on as well. That wraps up proceedings. We are going to be back with the Punchestown preview, very similar format, hopefully tipping you some winners ahead of that big festival. But in the meantime, hope you enjoy Grand National Week, especially you, Tony Keenan. Have fun on Saturday. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. That was Off the Fence.